Hello, Mr. Piccolo. What are you going to teach me today? A brand new technique? How to sense energy? What about how to fly?
Dodge!
Oh, man. This training with Mr. Piccolo is really difficult. But I think I'm finally getting the hang of it.
Dodge! Dodge!
Wow, I finally learned how to survive all by myself. Live on my own and surviving off the fat of the land. Mr. Piccolo will be so proud.
He hit me too! Go on! Hurry up and blast him with all your strength before he has time to dodge! Why didn't you dodge? We should dodge!
Wow, he really needs to learn how to dodge.
Yeah, I know, still working on that.
19 dodge!
Beginning dodge protocol.
Why are you starting a subroutine? It's not that complex!
What? What?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cel Cast. It is just me, myself, and I tonight on the show in this very special episode because this is not a normal episode. Basically, here's what we got. DragonBall Z is a show that me and Jacob enjoyed watching as kids. The problem is it's way too stinking long. And so we're covering in our upcoming TAS segments DragonBall Z Abridged. Now, that's not because we think it's necessarily better, although there are some nicer things about it. But it's faster, for one thing. Which will become a little bit more obvious in a second. But there's just a lot more to it. Or not more to it, but there's just... It's faster. It's a little bit more energetic. The pacing is a lot better. And when you get right down to it, it's kind of a more fun experience, especially in the modern day. Now, here's the thing, though. There was a lot... The reason I'm not just doing this as a part of our first episode of DragonBall Z Abridged is because there's a lot to talk about in terms of the show in general that I did not want to cram into that one episode, and Jacob agreed with me. So I'm going to show you what that is here. First off, like I said, DragonBall Z is a very long show. Let me give you a couple of statistics to explain, and why we're not doing all of DragonBall Z. So we just got done with Batman the Animated Series, right? That was a total of 109 episodes. That's 2,180 minutes of television watched, or 36 hours and 10 minutes. And it took us 55 Cel Cast episodes to review the entire show. DragonBall Z is 291 episodes, meaning it will take 5,820 minutes or 97 hours to watch the whole thing, which would take us 146 Cel Cast episodes in order to review it. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, why don't you do DragonBall Z Kai? Well, DragonBall Z Kai, which is a official abridgment of the anime, cutting it closer to the manga, it's 167 episodes, equaling 3,340 minutes, or 55 hours and 40 minutes. And that would take us 84 Cel Cast episodes in order to review. Putting all that in perspective, looking at DragonBall Z Abridged, we are looking at, for the primary part of the show, 67 10-minute episodes of the regular show, 5 DragonBall Z Kai Abridged episodes, which are about 5.5 minutes on average, 8 abridged movies, 30 minutes apiece, 4 abridged specials, 30 minutes apiece. 10 Cell Versus videos that are 30 minutes, or that are 5 minutes apiece. And then the Boobits, which are 30 clips that altogether equal half an hour. Meaning, total, we'll be looking at 1,138 minutes of footage, or 19 hours, and it will only take us 36 Cel Cast episodes to cover what's available. I'm sorry, one just looks a lot better to me as a reviewer than the others, because when you get right down to it, one of the faults of Dragon Ball Z, especially in the anime, is pacing. Dragon Ball Z Kai and Dragon Ball Z cover the same story. Dragon Ball Z is 291 episodes, Kai is 167. And it means that there's a lot of filler, which some of it is full episode filler. Some of it is last time on Dragon Ball Z. Power up for half an hour. Maybe a couple little side things. Random stuff here. End of the episode. On the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. Still charging for the next attack. There's a moment that we'll get to, and the Abridged even jokes about it, where Frieza says the whole planet's going to blow up in 5 minutes. And in Dragon Ball Z, it's like 15 episodes later when it finally blows up. Just a little bit longer than, the advertised 5 minutes or whatever the time is. Kind of doing that part off memory. There's a pacing issue. Some of it is you're moving back and forth and covering the same amount of time from different perspectives. Some of it is Akira Toriyama, bless his heart, got lost. So yeah, before I get too much farther, I should explain what actually is Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z is the second 2/3 of a manga called Dragon Ball. It was called Dragon Ball Z because literally Akira Toriyama thought this was going to be the final chapter. So Z for the end. Unfortunately, that's at the 1/3 mark of the show. The manga for Dragon Ball Z is 519 chapters total. Dragon Ball by itself, just the first third, is 194 chapters, and that takes up 153 episodes of the original anime, or 153 episodes of the anime. There was only one anime for the original Dragon Ball. These cover 3 sagas by themselves. First one being the Son Goku saga, which is split between the Pilaf arc and the Tournament arc. The second is the Red Ribbon Army saga, which is split between the Red Ribbon Army arc, the General Blue arc, Commander Red arc, and the Fortune Teller Baba arc. And then lastly, we have the Piccolo saga, which is split between the Tien Shinhan arc, the Demon King Piccolo arc, and Piccolo Jr. arc. There's a lot that goes there, and none of us Americans saw it originally, because we jumped straight into Dragon Ball Z, which is a much more action-packed style anime, because Dragon Ball itself was very comedic intentionally. It was definitely more of an action comedy, whereas Dragon Ball Z, while it never loses the comedy, it is focusing more on the action, if you don't count the fact that some fights take 15 episodes, it seems to get through. So in Dragon Ball Z, that takes up 324 chapters and 291 episodes for Dragon Ball Z, as mentioned earlier. These include the Saiyan arc, or Saiyan saga, which includes the Raditz arc and the Vegeta arc. The Frieza saga, which contains the Namek arc, the Ginyu Force arc, and the Frieza arc. A filler arc called the Garlic Jr. saga, or a filler saga called Garlic Jr. saga. It's not very long, but it is there. Then you have the Android and Cell saga, which contains the Trunks arc, the Androids arc, Imperfect Cell arc, Perfect Cell arc, and then the Cell Games arc. And then you have the Boo Saga, which starts off with the filler arc of Otherworld, followed by Great Saiyaman arc, the World Tournament arc, the Bobbity arc, the Majin Buu arc, the Fusion arc, the Kid Buu arc, and by this point, technically, it's over? But there is also a Peaceful World arc that served to actually close out Dragon Ball Z. Now, when you go back and you're looking at the full chronology, between the end of Kid Buu and the beginning of Peaceful World, all of the anime Dragon Ball Daima takes place, and all of Dragon Ball Super takes place. Now, as of this recording, we are still waiting to hear some actual announcement of the start of the Super remake anime, where they're actually taking Dragon Ball Super and shortening it down to better pace it, because it is paced kind of oddly for a anime that's not taking its cues from a manga, even though it also kind of is. It's a little confusing how that's set up, which it will eventually lead into next year the continuation of the Dragon Ball Super storyline, with adapting some of the chapters of the manga that have come out since the Dragon Ball Super anime finished. But all of this, I should mention, was written by a mangaka, that is the word, the mangaka, which is just the writer and creator and illustrator of Dragon Ball, which is Akira Toriyama. Akira Toriyama got his start with a little manga called Dr. Slump, which was a comedy based on making funny things happen. It was about a robot girl who was nearsighted. Yes, I know, robot girl who's nearsighted. That was created by a doctor who invented her while he was drunk and doesn't remember how he did it. And it's about them living this life. It's a comedy based on, it's basically a sitcom when you get right down to it. And this made him enough money. Akira Toriyama probably could have retired at that point, but he kept making stuff because he liked doing it. He started on an adaptation of a fantasy kind of fantasy sci-fi version of the Chinese epic Journey to the West, also known as Monkey, which is a story about it's a story about a Buddhist monk who tricks the Monkey King into serving as his protector as he's going around trying to get these Buddhist texts from, I think, India. I could be wrong on that. My apologies. But getting it from where they are back to China to bring enlightenment to China. And it's full of action. A lot of stories originate. A lot of Chinese and Japanese fairy tales originate from this, in the same way that many stories originate from 1001 Arabian Nights, or at least maybe not originate from that, but are connected through that, and that's the easiest place to find them nowadays. He started doing that, and that is what the first saga of Dragon Ball was. And that was all he planned to make, and it took off enough that his editor said, "You got to keep making more." So he kept making more. You get to Dragon Ball Z, and at this point, his editors were trying to get, or having him make more and more moves towards an action, more of an action manga instead of a comedic one. And and this is taking inspiration from the manga and anime Fist of the North Star, because it was very popular at the time, and Akira Toriyama studied that when trying to figure out how to best draw the fighters of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z into actually looking good with fight scenes. There was no break, really, from Dragon Ball's airing into Dragon Ball Z's airing. literally 1 week was the last episode of Dragon Ball. The next week was the first episode of Dragon Ball Z. And the reason for the switchover is they were wanting to have the anime feel more like an action anime than a comedic one, because the person in charge of the Dragon Ball anime was the same person who did the Dr. Slump anime, and they wanted to shift to basically a new project as they were adapting the rest of the manga, so it would have more of an action bent. And because Akira Toriyama thought, as he was always thinking as he was writing his next arc, that this was going to be the final arc, he decided, hey, this new anime should be called Dragon Ball Z because it's the end of Dragon Ball. Well, there's more of Dragon Ball Z than there is of Dragon Ball, so take that for what it's worth. Yeah, I should mention, the Dragon Ball Z anime has 39 pure filler episodes, and in 252 episodes, and out of 252 episodes, approximately 1.25 chapters per episode was how they adapted it. So it's kind of hard to tell when you're looking at that what parts of it are the anime is having to wait around so Akira Toriyama can write the chapter, and how much of it is Akira Toriyama is a little lost in his narrative because, you know, he's making this manga week to week and is trying to figure out how to get to where the next where the story needs to go and how to get there. There's many points in this where he does feel like he's going off in one direction and then he goes off in another direction for a while. In Japan, this started airing in April 26, 1989, and would air until January 31st, 1996. The first English dub, sometimes called the Ocean Group dub or the Saban dub, because Saban was involved in the early days, began airing on August 31st, 1998. The Funimation dub, which started on episode 68, and then later episodes 1 through 67 would be redubbed. The Funimation dub first started airing on September 13th, 1999. Like I said, starting with episode 68. Episodes 1 through 67 would be redubbed in 2005. Be aware that in some of these original airings of these episodes, especially in America, these were all edited to fit American FCC standards. So any dirty jokes were cut out. But when you go back and watch the Dragon Ball Z we have that's available now on your streaming services or on wherever you are watching it, it is the uncut version. By 1996, when the show finished, there were 4 Dragon Ball movies and 13 Dragon Ball Z movies and 2 television specials. After the end of Dragon Ball Z, there were 64 episodes of another anime called Dragon Ball GT, which ended in Japan in 1997. Not everyone likes GT. It's kind of a weird show. There were no other major Dragon Ball projects until the 2009 Fox movie, Dragon Ball Evolution, which not many people liked, including Akira Toriyama. This movie was so bad that Toriyama decided to take back control of the franchise and would be heavily involved, starting with Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, which actually started off as just a standard out of canon Dragon Ball Z. Give a decent excuse for why the last half is a giant fight scene. That kind of movie. He took over. He made changes with the idea of continuing the story. So, we had Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, and then Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F. Then they had the Dragon Ball Super anime went into production. It went for until it ended, in which they then made the movie Dragon Ball Super Broly, and then Dragon Ball Super Superhero, and then Dragon Ball Daima. That was the last project he worked on until he passed away on March 1st, 2024, at the age of 68. And that is basically the history of Dragon Ball. We do know they are working on some upcoming shortenings of Dragon Ball Super, and that will lead into the first fully new project, which the Galactic Patrol arc that will happen. That takes place after where Super ends, but that's at least a year out, if not farther. So yeah, that explains the Dragon Ball Z half of this. The other half of the title is abridged. What is abridged? Well, I would tell you that, abridged, according to the definition of abridged, just means that it's shorter. It's more clear cut. It's basically like the Cliff Notes version of whatever property you're doing. But in the terms of an abridged series, in the YouTube sense, this shortens the anime, or now there's actually some abridged non-anime coming out, by rewriting parts of, by making it a comedic parody of the original with some re-editing and redubbing the footage with satirical dialogue. There are new jokes and wildly altered character personalities. This is according to Wikipedia. Some examples, while I would not call these officially abridged series, there are three anime that kind of have this treatment, but more in an official sense, for different reasons. Samurai Pizza Cats, which was originally made that way because they did not get a script from Japan, so they basically wrote scripts based on the visual footage. Shin-Chan, which was an Adult Swim anime that used the same process, even though they had the scripts, but they did so for fun. Another example is Ghost Stories, another one where they had the scripts, but they didn't think anyone would actually care, so the rights holder said you can do whatever you want as long as you don't change character names and you don't change the name of the yokai, which are the ghosts and monsters of that story. And they kind of went off the rails. I'm not going to suggest you go watch it, but you can find clips on YouTube. The first fan-made abridged series was called Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged Series, which was released in 2006 by YouTuber Little Karibo, real name Martin Billany, he created and popularized this format. There were a lot of abridged series that kind of popped up very quickly that were some of them were good, most of them were bad. But in this rush of new stuff, Team 4-Star emerged, who makes this show. And most of the other ones before Team 4-Star were only made by one or two people. Team 4-Star was founded by Scott Frericks, a.k.a. Kaiser Neko, who had previously been working on a Lupin the Third abridged series. Nick Landis, a.k.a. Lanny Pator, who made a Yu Yu Hakusho abridged series. And he was a member of another group that kind of started doing what Team 4-Star did, called Neighborhood Cluck, that abridged the Dead Zone and World's Strongest films with a meaning to go and continue making, but it fell through because, stuff happens. And lastly, we had Curtis Arnott, a.k.a. Takahata 101, who was making a G Gundam abridged. The three would end up writing the episodes, and Kaiser Neko would edit them for Dragon Ball Z Abridged. Ultimately, Team 4-Star would abridge the Saiyan Saga, Frieza Saga, and Cell Saga, the first 8 movies, two specials before they originally ended the project. They came back and abridged the Boo Saga into Boo Bits for Totally Not Mark's YouTube channel. They didn't do a whole abridgment. They just took moments and said, if we had made a whole saga, these would be what would have been our funny moments, basically. And it works for the most part. Also in that time, they made 10 Cell versus videos leading up into the Cell games arc, and they've since made 2 series of original animated shorts called Dragon Shorts, or Dragon Short Z is how it's written, and Hiffle, the Home for Infinite Losers, following what happens to the villains technically it would be Hell, but the Saban dub called Hell the home for infinite losers because religious imagery was not allowed on television for kids, apparently. Now, these last two shorts, we're not reviewing those simply for time, and we just decided not to cover them. Other projects that Team 4-Star has since done are Hellsing Ultimate Abridged, Final Fantasy VII Machine Abridged, which was part abridgment, part machinima with the Final Fantasy VII engine, and of course adapting Final Fantasy VII. And they've also been started doing a Toonami Abridged, which has been taking the whole series of a show and kind of putting it into like two to three 10-minute episodes. They've done Sailor Moon and Yu Yu Hakusho and they are focused, and Toonami Abridged is focusing on anime that appeared on Toonami. Getting into the cast list, all of the episodes are written and directed by Scott Frerick, aka Kaiser Neko. And Scott, if I'm mispronouncing your last name, I apologize. I can't tell by looking. Blame me. I don't mean anything bad by it. Nick Landis, aka Lanny Pator, and Curtis Arnott, aka Takahata 101. Getting into the cast, we've got Lawrence Simpson, aka Masako X, who plays Goku, Gohan, and is the second Master Roshi. Brandon Rainsford as aka Vegeta 3986, who was the first voice of Kami, the quote-unquote actual voice of Raditz, the first voice of Yamcha, Kui, Bojack, and the first voice of Oolong. Nick Landis, aka Lanny Pator, is the voice of Vegeta, Piccolo, Krillin, Shenron, Mr. Popo, the joke version of Raditz at the beginning, and the first voice of Master Roshi, or a voice of Master Roshi. Anyway, Curtis Arnott, aka Takahata 101, is the voice of Nappa, Guru, Goldo, Dende, Cell, Parunga, the Arlean King, Mori, and Bardock. Ben Crichton, aka HBI 2K, played Farmer with Shotgun, King Cold, Nail, Dabura, and Dr. Briefs. Corrine Sundberg, a.k.a. Megami 33, played Bulma, Puar, and Chaozu. Mark Soskin, a.k.a. Ganzing Ba, played Tien Shenhan, King Yema, Android 17, Chilled, Raccoon, and Jace. Anthony Sardina, a.k.a. Antfish, played Dodoria, Mr. Satan, and Captain Ginyu. J.M. Gote, a.k.a., and he goes by two different names on YouTube, Remix / Weekly Tube Show, depending on what era you're looking at. He was the voice of Kami, Android 16, Broly, and Walter. Chris Tout, a.k.a. Forello, was the second voice of Yamcha and Butarega. Chris Guro, a.k.a. General Ivan, is the voice of Dr. Gero and Cooler. Amber Lee Connors, a.k.a. Shudo Ranmaru, played Android 18 and Panty. Chris Niasi, a.k.a. Kerbifer, was the Ox King. Chris Woodside, a.k.a. Chrisrix, was the first voice of Chi-Chi. Martin Billany, a.k.a. Lil Karibo. Yes, he did do some work for this show. He is the narrator and Frieza. And lastly, we've got Kimlin Tran, a.k.a. Hinelmick, and that is the current voice of Chi-Chi. And that is basically everything you probably need to know about this. I will say, if you're watching it and you're thinking, hey, this starts off kind of bad, nobody, not even the creators of Dragon Ball Z Abridged, disagree with you. It does kind of start off at its lowest point, but it grows and gets better. The technical, the editing and the writing do increase in terms of quality as time goes on, but you can't jump into where it's good and expect to, well, you kind of can expect to follow it, but you might as well start at the beginning and just start there and go through it. It's, like I said, it's not going to take long. I will say, if you're also looking at it, you'll note that season 1 is in widescreen, whereas the rest of it, outside of the movies, is in full screen aspect ratio. That's because the first season, the video was sourced from from the international DVDs that Funimation put out, what the fans call the orange bricks. They're not the best quality, which is why later on they moved on to taking the Japanese-sourced Dragon Boxes sets, which included much better transfers of the original film. So yeah, that's basically the end of this Dragon Ball primer. Join us on our next episode, where along with the movie, we will be looking at the first 3 episodes of Dragon Ball Z Abridged. And in the meantime, this has been Drew, and I'll catch you in the next frame.
To follow Jacob and Drew's individual internet exploits, check out the Linktree links in the show notes. You can email us at thecelcastpodcast@gmail.com, follow us on Twitter or X at @cast_cel, follow our Facebook page, The Cel Cast Podcast, and join our Facebook group, The Cel Nation, our YouTube channel, Cel Cast, and our Rumble channel, The Cel Cast Gaming. You can join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central for our live recordings of our episodes on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. You can also join Drew on those same streaming channels on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Central for gaming streams. You can listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else fine podcasts can be downloaded from. Please rate and review us where you found us. Our theme song is Drop and Roll by Silent Partner. Our bad movie theme is It's Party Time by Gregory Snegoff, with additional audio from the film Titanic: The Legend Goes On, and remember, that's Cel with a single L.